In this video, I'll show you how to transfer your self-invested personal pension, or SIPP, from one platform to another. To illustrate this, I'm actually moving my Vanguard SIPP to the InvestEngine platform. So I'll give reasons behind my move and also some tips for making such moves faster and easier. And I'll also share the timeline for the move, so you can get an idea of how long it takes. I should also mention that I'm not being paid to make this video by InvestEngine or, of course, by Vanguard. Now, if you do enjoy our content, don't forget to like this video, and if you're not already, subscribe to our channel. So let's start with the reasons why I'm moving in the first place. Now, I've been with Vanguard with an ISA and a SIPP since 2020, and on the whole I've been very happy with the platform. It's simple, it's fairly low fee compared to other platforms, and it just does what you'd expect it to do. There are really no frills to the platform. However, lots of people said, Roman, you're always talking about fees. Wouldn't it be cheaper to hold exactly the same single fund on another platform? And of course they were right. Perhaps it was just laziness that stopped me moving, but this is finally me getting around to it. So I thought I'd share it so that other people can see the process. So let's start with cost, which is my primary reason for moving. Now, whatever platform you're on, you're going to still have to pay the fees for the funds that you own. The way those are charged is by subtracting a little bit from your daily return. That's never actually paid in cash to the fund manager. What you do end up often paying for in cash is the platform fee. In addition, some platforms have trading fees or currency conversion fees. Some even have inactivity fees. Well, on Vanguard, you don't pay transaction fees, and the fee itself is a very low 0.15% of your invested amount, paid annually. Now, there is a floor to that now of £48 a year, and there's a cap of £375. So once you hit that cap, add it up across all of your investment accounts, your general investment account, your ISA, your SIPP, then you don't pay any additional fees per year. Now, because I'd aggregated several pensions onto the Vanguard platform, I hit that cap. So as a percentage fee, I wasn't paying much. However, I was still paying £375 a year. Now, by moving to InvestEngine, that platform fee went to zero. Yes, I'd still be paying fund management fees because if you own funds, you pay those whichever platform you're on. And instead of the restriction of only having Vanguard funds to choose from, I now have a restriction that I can only buy exchange-traded funds. InvestEngine has 770 of those as I make this video, so the choice is pretty wide, and it's getting wider all the time. But generally I only buy one fund anyway, so really that wider choice just allows me to choose a global equity fund which has got more of the attributes I want. And by having a wider choice of ETFs, there's also a higher chance of finding a fund with lower fees. Now, you might expect, because the fee for the platform is lower than it is on Vanguard, that InvestEngine would have perhaps worse functionality. And yet it's actually the opposite. There are many features on InvestEngine which simply aren't available on Vanguard. And this is true of many of the innovative new platforms like, say, Trading 212. They have things like pies on Trading 212, which maps onto smart portfolios on InvestEngine. The idea being that you can have little portfolios within your overall portfolio. So if you've got strategies, you can keep them separate from everything else. Furthermore, you can rebalance those strategies with a click of a button. Also, because it's an ETF-only platform, I can always be fully invested. There'll never be some cash which doesn't quite make it into the portfolio because I can't buy a rounded number of shares. And remember, funds are sometimes quite expensive. They can run into thousands of pounds. Now, as you'll see later, I didn't move all of my SIPP from Vanguard to InvestEngine. I kept some of my money on Vanguard. And that's because one of the features which is missing currently on InvestEngine is the ability to put money into your SIPP directly from your company if you're a company director. So what I can do in future is carry on making those contributions into my Vanguard SIPP, and then when it reaches a certain threshold, or maybe once a year, I'll transfer the balance, which is above 10,000, onto InvestEngine again. Before we go on to talk about the individual steps in moving your SIPP from one platform to another, let me quickly mention our premium website membership. Now let's say you wanted to discuss the actual experience of real people moving their SIPP. Well, you could do that using our chat application. Plus you get access to lots of members-only videos and our trackers and our tools which allow you to monitor macroeconomics and markets. And we've just launched a collaboration with My Finance Future, an incredibly powerful financial planning app. Now this allows you to create cash flow projections based on your circumstances, and it also allows you to plan for your legacy and reduce inheritance tax. So to learn more about our membership and its benefits, just go to pensioncraft.com/membership or click on the link in the description below. Step number 1 is to create a SIPP account on the platform you're moving to, in this case InvestEngine. Now I already had an ISA on InvestEngine, so I had to create a new account which was my SIPP account, and you can see the button for that at the bottom of this page. Then this information box popped up and you can see that it says that you worry less about fees with zero account fees, certainly true, and that you can invest in hundreds of ETFs which are available on the platform. The next page gives me some more information and some warnings. It says that self-invested personal pensions are designed for people comfortable choosing their own investments. I think I am. And if you're not sure about the investments which are right for you, then you should speak to a financial advisor. Again, I think I'll pass on that. Another point which is important is that this is for people who are still in the accumulation phase for their pension. There isn't a drawdown product yet on InvestEngine. Of course, that'll be available later. So if you are in drawdown, this isn't suitable yet, although it's probably worth checking when you watch this video. And of course, you need to be 55 in order to withdraw funds from your SIPP, because that's when your pension kicks in. And that'll rise to 57 in 2028. Then you get some legal pages which are slightly scary and quite wordy, so I'll just skip through them. But firstly, it checks that my details are correct. It looks at my name, my email address, my mail address, my national insurance number and my date of birth, just to check it's the right person, I guess. Then there's a general SIPP declaration which talks about reasons for opening the SIPP, and I have to confirm that I've carefully read these documents at the bottom of the page. I'm not a US citizen, I'm a UK citizen, and so on. And then we get an information declaration. Then we get pension plan declarations. So have I received financial advice in order to do this move? Then there are some risk declarations and contribution declarations. So I accepted those. And that was it. So the whole process took about maybe 5 minutes because I did read some of the documents, of course, but all pretty easy and straightforward. The second step is you can choose what to invest in, and this is an optional step. So once I confirm I accept those financial advice, risk and SIPP contribution declarations, I come through to this page where I can actually choose the investments I use on the InvestEngine platform. Now notice there are 4 options here. Now I'm going to go for the do-it-yourself option because I'm quite comfortable choosing my own funds. Then you have to choose a portfolio. Now for me, it's pretty easy. I won't tell you exactly which funds I've gone for. There are a wide range of ETFs you can use, but I'll do that in a separate video. And then once all of that's complete, you're ready to start investing. So in step 3, you're going to fund your SIPP. And the way you do that is by transferring funds from another SIPP on another platform. Now you could fund it with cash from your bank account, but that's not what we're going to do here. This is a transfer. So this is the information box that pops up when you choose to do that. And currently, as I make this video, you can only do transfers from Vanguard to InvestEngine. Later on, they're going to allow transfers from other platforms. So again, it's a good idea to check whether that's true when you watch this video. But you can see that there are certain rules as to whether you can transfer or not. Is Vanguard your current pension provider? Is the pension in drawdown, in which case currently it can't be transferred? And is your pension subject to any proposed divorce, earmarking or pension sharing orders? And of course there are some disclaimers, they check my details again, but this is the really important part of the form. So there are 2 things you're deciding on this page. The first one is whether you're doing a full or partial transfer. Now in my case, remember, I wanted to keep a toe in the water on Vanguard so that I can make my business contributions to my SIPP. So I chose a partial transfer, and in order to keep the account open on Vanguard, I had to leave at least £10,000 in my Vanguard SIPP. The second option is one which people often find confusing because they use this weird Latin phrase, in specie. All that means is, do you want to move the funds themselves without selling them, or do you want to sell the funds into cash and then move the cash? If you choose to move the funds directly, that's called an in specie transfer. Now it turns out, speaking to support from Vanguard and InvestEngine, that it's actually quicker usually to do a cash transfer. If you move in specie, there's more paperwork involved and that can take longer. And I wanted this to be as fast as possible. So I chose a cash transfer. And that has consequences too, as we'll see in a moment. Then I went through to another declaration, and then there was a checkbox to ensure that I understood and agreed with the terms provided in the disclaimer and the declaration. And that was it. It was all pretty straightforward, and as long as you understand what in specie means, whether you want a partial transfer, then I think there isn't a lot to think about there. So now let's go to the fun part, which is the actual transfer timeline. And I'll go from day 0 all the way to the final transfer day. So day 0, January the 20th, 2025, that's when I filled in all those forms and told InvestEngine I want to move my SIPP to your platform from Vanguard. Now you might think things would happen very quickly after that perhaps Vanguard would tell me, we've been told to move your SIPP to this platform, is that right? But in fact it took 10 days for Vanguard to notify me that that was going to happen. And then somewhat confusingly they said, we cannot make any progress with your transfer until we receive a copy of the form with both sections filled in. The form they're talking about was a transfer out acknowledgement and declaration form, which they claimed was in the documents section on my Vanguard account. So of course I looked in my documents section, no document. So that was confusing. There was a second secure message from Vanguard on the same day which said, we've heard you're moving your account to InvestEngine. InvestEngine have specified this as a partial cash transfer, and there it says insert transfer amount. Looks like they forgot to fill that in. However, you don't have enough available cash for us to action this request, so you've got to sell stuff in order to have the cash to move. Because remember, this is a cash transfer, it's not in specie. I'm not moving it as a fund. Once this is settled, which can take up to 4 business days, we'll then be able to process the transfer out on your behalf. And just to jolly me along, they say, please note if you don't initiate the required sell orders within the next 10 business days, we'll cancel the transfer request. So obediently, I went to my Vanguard SIPP, I sold my VHVG holdings, and I told them about it. So on day 11, I said, I've actioned the sale of my fund, and this should now free up sufficient cash for the transfer to InvestEngine once the trade clears. Now on day 12, I got a bit frustrated that I couldn't find this document, the transfer out acknowledgement and declaration form. So I wrote to Vanguard to tell them about it and to say I couldn't find it. Now for some reason it took them 4 days to reply to that message. And what they said was, we see that you've sold VHVG, so you've now got enough cash to transfer. But concerning your transfer out acknowledgement and declaration form, please disregard this, as this form is only required if the new provider doesn't complete the transfer on the electronic transfer system Origo. Now it turns out that InvestEngine does use Origo, so the form wasn't necessary. So this was just a spurious requirement from Vanguard, and I just wish they'd checked. It doesn't make them look great to say things like that and then not provide the document. They also say that the transfer out will take up to 10 weeks to complete. As we'll see, it actually didn't take anywhere near that long. Then after 2 days, Vanguard got in touch to say, as part of our initial checks before we proceed, we need to verify with you that this is a genuine transfer request. It turned out there was another reason. A member of our team will call to discuss and confirm details of your transfer out request. They also tell me that I need to keep a minimum of £10,000 to keep the account open. Now it took a while for Vanguard to call me, so in the end I called them, and it turned out what they wanted to check was whether I'd taken advice in order to move my SIPP. Now I haven't taken advice to do that, but I think they just wanted to check that I hadn't been coerced to move and that I understood the consequences of moving my SIPP, which I think I did. So after that was all cleared up, everything could proceed. The cash was in the account, all the legal hurdles had been jumped, and the imaginary form hadn't been signed because it didn't need to be. 5 days later, I got an email from InvestEngine saying that the SIPP transfer was in progress. And then finally, on day 32, I received this email from InvestEngine, which said that the transfer was complete. However, what I actually noticed was that the money had already come out of my Vanguard account that day, but not appeared in my InvestEngine account. So I was very, very scared. This wasn't a small sum of money, and I just wondered where it was in the ether. So I wrote a panicked email to InvestEngine, which responded within an hour, unlike Vanguard, and they reassured me that the transfer was about to happen. And indeed, by the end of that day, the money was in my InvestEngine account. So that was my transfer process. It was quicker than I thought and less painful than I thought, although I wasn't that impressed with Vanguard's ability to manage it. InvestEngine, on the other hand, were very good through the entire process. They were much more responsive to my emails, they responded more quickly, whereas Vanguard tended to drag its feet, perhaps because of the volume of people moving their money out. Now, as you know, I just had one fund in my Vanguard SIPP, VHVG, but I think it's the topic of an entirely new video as to how I'm going to invest my money on the new platform. So that one's going to be coming sometime soon. So I'd like to hear your experiences of transferring your pensions. How long did it take you? Where did you move from and to? And were there any hiccups along the way, as there were for my transfer? Tell me in the comments what happened to you. And, as always, thank you for listening.